Good to see everybody. I hope everybody had a wonderful weekend. Uh, before we get started, just a reminder, right? Please chat in, um, questions, comments, observations, anything like that. It's always good to be able to share, and a lot of the comments and insights that everyone's had along the way during our previous sessions, I think has really helped everybody else. So please feel free to send in your thoughts and comments, even privately if you'd like. That would be fine too. So, so today we're going to continue talking about time, and so this will be part two of the illusion of time, uh, kind of sub-series, right, of Mindful Monday, and we're going to talk about time and your intentions, right, and how your intentions actually can shortcut or eclipse time. And it's kind of an exciting topic in a lot of ways. One of it gets into the science of it, and we'll spend a little bit of time on that. But first, let's kind of summarize what we've been talking about last week. So there's two different types of time. I think this is really foundational for the latter part of today's session. So there's two types of time. There's linear events, and then there are nonlinear events. And some of the examples we used last week of linear event is like a timeline. So we have this timeline of the United States, right? The history of the United States. Another linear event would be, we talked about putting together like a gas barbecue grill, right? You got to follow all the directions. That's a linear event. I have to do this before I can do this, right? Etc. And then another example of of linear is driving. I drove from Keene to Bedford today. It's 50 something miles. It's going to take me this much time. That's linear. So it's important to understand the difference between linear events and nonlinear events. So now nonlinear. So we talked about intuition. Now, intuition, okay, and it comes in a lot of different ways, and people can look at it. There are all sorts of different ways that people understand it, but intuition is kind of like that knowing, okay? And it's a knowing that doesn't pull you through a linear process. You just know, okay? You just know that I got to call your mother, or that this event is not turning out right, okay? You just know, like, you don't need to go through all the steps in intuition to get to the answer. The answer is already coming to you in advance of you going through all the steps. The question is, do you believe it, and are you listening to it so that you can avoid doing all the steps? Okay, that's kind of really what intuition is. Another type of nonlinear is just kind of daydreaming, right? We daydream about you might want a lake house, or you daydream about traveling someplace, right? But what you're doing when you're daydreaming, okay, when you're actually in that space, you're actually going there, okay? So you'll say, I want to go to Paris, okay? And you're envisioning the Eiffel Tower. Well, if you hold that view long enough, okay, and you hold it and you're consistent about it, all right, you will end up there somehow, all right? And that's a nonlinear event. Okay, you've actually put yourself there, and if you hold on to it, okay, you hold on to that vision of it, you'll eventually find yourself there. And then the last one too that I've got in here as an example of a nonlinear event is kind of co-creating, right, or creating things. So like everything is created twice, right? Once in your mind and once in reality, and that's nonlinear. Okay, you have a vision of something before you've actually gone through the steps to get it. You gotta think about that for a second. So anybody whoever has invented something has gone through, doesn't matter what it is. I was at the gym the other morning and I saw the Sham Wow guy. Remember the Sham Wow guy? Remember him? Well, now they have Sham Wow face masks. And I thought, and I haven't seen the Sham Wow guy in a long time. And I'm like, well, okay, somebody dreamed about the Sham Wow face mask. Okay. But before this guy showed up on TV in his infomercial, somebody had the dream of it. Okay. Somebody at Sham Wow World, if there's ever such a thing, right? That's where that came from. Okay. So when we daydream or when we create, we're actually creating something in a non-linear space, okay, before we go through the linear steps to get there, right? And it's kind of critical to get good at this, is to understand when am I in a linear event and when am I in a non-linear event. And we talked about, and we just mentioned this, Stephen Covey quote, everything's created twice, once in your mind, once in reality. That's how you pull time and events towards you. Now we're going to talk about some of the really fun stuff, right? So we're going to talk about quantum mechanics and the observer effect. Now, I'm going to preface this by saying, you know, I was kind of an average student and probably a below average student in math and science. So I will not do much of this. I will not do much justice with this, but hopefully I'll be able to explain it. I've studied it myself quite a bit, never actually having to explain it in kind of a condensed version like the time we have today. So what I would encourage you to do is, if you're interested in this, and I would encourage you to be interested in it, okay, is to spend some time studying it on your own, and I can make some recommendations for that. There are some fun things to material to reference. So we're going to talk about quantum mechanics and the quantum effect. Just going to adjust my screen here. Okay, there we go. So you have two different types of physics. You have traditional, like Newtonian physics, and you have quantum physics, quantum mechanics. And quantum mechanics, quantum physics became popular around 1900, and it had kind of the usual suspects involved in it, Einstein and some of those people. Although Einstein didn't like it very much, and it's different from Newtonian physics in that quantum mechanics or quantum physics is the science. It's the science of dealing with the behavior of matter and energy on the scale of atoms and subatomic particles. And so what it gets into is understanding how atoms work and how they move around, and how they get repositioned. And in physics, the observer effect is the disturbance of an observed system by the act of observation. So atoms and subatomic particles can be influenced by being observed. Either they're being observed by us, okay, or maybe even a scientific instrument, okay. But that things at a subatomic and atomic level, right, which is what we all are, okay, are influenced by observation. And one of the things that's kind of fascinating is that the art of looking at something changes it. An effect that holds true, this holds true for people, animals, atoms, really everything. And to get a better understanding, we need to consider the observer effect. Observing things changes them. And some phenomena only exist when they observe. And remember when we were talking about how drugs are tested, they're always tested against the placebo, okay? And they do it in blind, double blind, triple blind surveys, assessments, because they're testing it against, when they test a drug, and we've talked about this a couple times now, I think it's really important to understand this. So when you take a medication, that medication has been tested against the placebo group. So you got a group of people that have been given basically sugar pills and a group of people that have been given the real drug. And the question becomes on the real drug is how many people were affected on the real drug greater than the people who were given the placebo, and their mind actually helped them get better, okay? Because they were able to organize themselves and organize their body, their atoms, right, their cells and all that, their genes, to basically initiate the healing process as opposed to the drug initiating the healing process. And so in physics, and in the quantum world is really about the observer, and how when things are observed, they will act a certain way, right? Now, we are made up of the universe. We're made up of atoms and particles and genes and systems and biology, all right, and all that. And how we influence ourselves and how we look at ourselves really influences the outcome. And it's kind of this fourth bullet on here. I think it's interesting how it was phrased, is that one of the most bizarre premises of quantum theory, which has long fascinated, and I want you to focus on this, has long fascinated philosophers and physicists. Now, I can't think of two groups of people on the surface that would have the least amount of things to do with each other: philosophy and physics. Okay, but both are fascinated with the fact that actually the act of watching, okay, affects reality. The act of observing. And so let's take some kind of everyday common observation experiences we've had to understand this better. So we've all been in a situation where we have felt someone staring at us. Who's had that? Everybody, right? We all have that. And you turn your back, turn your head real quickly, and behind you is somebody staring at you, right? And it's been the same for you. You could be staring at somebody, right? And you know, for whatever reason you might have, and they all of a sudden sense it, okay, and they turn and they look at you, right? And so there are very common things that we can look at that help us kind of prove this out. And so what's happened is that both philosophy, religion, spirituality, and hard science are pretty fascinated by this. And now it has permeated the everyday world, so to speak, where it's becoming, you know, it's moved out of the laboratory into society. That's why we're having this conversation today. These concepts have moved out of the laboratory and out of the halls of academia, for instance, at a philosophical level, and now they really permeate most of society. This is very easy information to have, and it's very easy to actually prove out. So, and you can think about other times when you've had that. For instance, you've been thinking of something, okay, and all of a sudden you're talking to somebody somehow connected to whatever the event is, right? So I'm thinking about something at work. I talked to one of my coworkers, and that person says, "You know what? I had the exact same thought." Okay, right? That's not a coincidence. That is the organization of the observer effect. That's the organization of quantum information. All right, and it's very common for authors to have a title of a book in mind, and when they go to start the book, all of a sudden what they realize is that somebody else someplace else has actually done the book or has actually reserved the title. Okay, because again, once concepts kind of get thrown into the quantum field, all right, everybody has access to them. And then if you're kind of on that frequency, you then kind of tap into it, right? And that's a little bit kind of like what the observer effect is a little bit what quantum physics is about. And it's definitely worth spending a little bit of time on because it really affects what we do every day. And it also affects time. We actually can get to the end faster, okay, by understanding these things. Because once we put our focus, okay, which is the observer effect, so we're focusing on something in our lives, right, whatever it is we want, whether it's for our kids or for us or relationship or work, health, doesn't matter what it is. Once we put our focus on that, okay, we are actually observing. We're actually observing the process. And the more we put time and attention and focus, okay, on it, all right, even subconscious focus, okay, like it's in the back of my mind, I want to do this thing, all right, then what happens is, all right, as we then are basically shaping the outcome. And that's what the observer effect is. It's basically, you know, taking kind of the raw parts of nature, right, in the universe and forming them in a way. And that's what helps us really with our intentions by this, help us get to time. They actually help us skip steps, and they actually can help us really get to things faster. So personal growth, right, has the exact same trajectory. So it takes no more effort to grow a blade of grass as it does a sequoia, right? It maybe takes a little longer, okay, but nature just knows how to do these things. And we're all part of nature. And so personal growth is the same way. It has really no speed limit attached to it. So if you want to say, well, now this is where we get into time and our intentions, time and attention. So if we say, I want to go someplace, I want to be, I want to go to Paris in 3 years. Well, you'll go in 3 years. If I say I want to go in 6 months, more likely you're going to go in 6 months. Now, if you're going to say I'm going to go next week, that might be a little bit of a stretch. Okay. But so what happens is that when we put our focus on things, okay, the time frame in which we associate with it, okay, is really kind of a construct. Now, sometimes we aren't ready, okay? So, we might want a change of circumstance, and it might not be that that we might need more time because we're mentally not ready, or maybe we're not mentally and physically ready. All right, and so that part is true. However, you really can do things almost really as fast as you want. And I always think it's interesting when we start a project or a process, we look at it, and I think everybody does that. We're like, oh, this is going to take forever. It's going to take too long. It's going to take long enough. Really, may as well feel like doing it. But once you've started it, okay, you finished it, and then it's as if you've always been done. It's like you've always been in that space. Okay. And so just remember, your personal growth has no speed limits attached to it, only the limits that reasonably you put on it. Okay. So if you say it's going to take me 5 years to lose 75 pounds, it will take you 5 years to lose 75 pounds. Okay. Now, losing 75 pounds in 6 months, there's probably some health components to that. But generally speaking, right, be careful about what type of time frame you put on, because that's the time frame in which you're going to get results. And that's the quantum aspect of it. So how to pull time and your intentions to you. Okay. This is different than chasing it. It's how do we pull this towards us? All right. So you hold a constant visual of your intention or intentions, right? This isn't singular, for the outcomes you desire regarding what you seek. So, in the back of your mind, you've got it in your subconscious that I want to do this thing, whatever it is, right? I want to give up coffee, or whatever the case may be. And you keep that there, and the longer you keep it there, and the longer you can hold the visual of what it is, okay? As long as you can hold the visual, like going to the gym, okay, or eating healthy, or going to Paris, or whatever the case may be, the longer you hold that visual and you hold it consistently, okay, it could be multiple outcomes, all right, then that will aid you in getting there. Leave yourself visual reminders. So visual reminders are helpful because they're helpful to bring you back to your visualization, back to your thought, your core belief, your core thought about how you want to get someplace. So a visual reminder, like a really common one, is storyboarding. I personally don't have any experience with it, although I know people who do, and I've certainly read enough about it where it has very positive effects, but everybody's different. So storyboarding, you can do a storyboard of what kind of a collage, right, of what changes you want to have happen. And so you're making you're either cutting out pictures or drawing, wherever the case may be, about what you want life to look like, right? It could be your entire life, it could be aspects of your life, doesn't really matter what it is, but that storyboard allows you to maintain the visual. Certainly pictures, messages, screensavers. That's one of the things. I don't know if you guys can see this. You probably can't see this on mine or not, but I can't show it to you, but I keep the yin yang as my screensaver on my phone and on my computer. And one of the reasons why I do that is it reminds me of the duality of things. Okay, strengths or weaknesses, weaknesses or strengths, and duality, right? And that's always been kind of a key thing for me to understand. But leave yourself reminders, okay? There's always these pictures of people leaving sticky notes all over the place. I don't know if I would advocate for that. It seems like it's, after a while, it will become kind of like clutter, but whatever works for you. And it might not be, yeah, you might have to experiment a little bit. So leave yourself visual reminders. Replace all thoughts that do not match your intention with ones that do. This is super critical. We've talked about this before. You know, positive energy is 10 times stronger than negative energy. So if you have a negative thought, you have to say that. You have to remove that thought and put in the thought that reinforces what you want, how you're pulling your intentions towards you. Okay. Every negative thought you have that's in contradiction to the direction you want to go in pushes time away. It doesn't pull time towards you. Okay. If you have enough negative thoughts, it pushes things further away. Okay. And everything, right, is somewhat incremental. So the more positive your thoughts are, the more you replace and discard the negative ones. You change your thinking, you're changing your programming. Okay. Then the more you're pulling things to you. Here's a tough one, and it's tough. There's no two ways about it. Is that you have to be relentless about not allowing anyone or anything that doesn't match your intention or outcome near you. Super tough. Now, that doesn't mean you take a machete and you cut all things that don't match and people out of your lives, but you have to be judicious about how you allow those influences on you. And we see this a lot, right? Somebody wants to go someplace that's outside of their peer group, okay? You might be the first person in your peer group, or your peer group could be family, it doesn't really matter what it is, right? But you could be the first person that wants to go do this thing, right? So you're breaking the orbit from your peer group. And what's the peer group want to do? They want to bring you back, okay? They want to bring you back, not because they're selfish or anything like that, but because they're concerned about how what you're doing is going to impact them, right? They're really not all that concerned about you, but they're really more concerned about how that's going to impact themselves. So it's hard, and there's kind, thoughtful, mindful ways to kind of create a little bit of separation between you and the things and the people that don't support your intentions. But you have to be mindful of it, and you have to reduce the dosing that you're getting of information that's just not helpful to your journey. Okay. And then I think another key piece to it is, living like you're already there. And living like you're already there is, it seems counterintuitive because we've all been taught to, ask for things. When we are taught to pray, for instance, I was brought up Roman Catholic. When we were taught to pray, we prayed for something, which really means it doesn't exist. And what I'm praying for is some outside divine source to bring it to me, as opposed to feeling like I already have it because I am a divine source myself. All of us are, right? And because I am, and I already have all the opportunities, are already here. I just have to get in the right bandwidth or frequency of it. Okay. And that's a different kind of topic and a different discipline. Maybe we can spend some time on that, because that really is very counter to how most religions have taught us, and nothing, no knock on religion, it's just how it's been formulated. But when you come from it already being done, okay, you are then pulling your intentions are now fully aligned, and the more your intentions are fully aligned, the more they'll meet you in the space that you're in. So you're pulling them towards you, and that's not an easy one. And it's something that, no matter how mindful you are around it, you're always going to have to work at it. Come from that place as if it's already existed. Like you can't say, for instance, that I'm going to be grateful once I get this, whatever this is. It's, I'm grateful now. I'm grateful for what I have. Okay. Anything else weren't above that, right? is kind of a benefit. But because I'm grateful the way I am now, I'm going to be attracting gratitude. So, and I'm going to be attracting more things that are kind of in that bandwidth of gratitude. And it's the same thing with your intentions. The more you're living from where you want to be, okay, as opposed to waiting for some outside event or series of events to get you there, live as if you're already there, right? And now what you're doing is you're collapsing time to your present. So I think it's a really cool process. Not much, we can't really do justice to it in a 25 minutes or so. But it's super cool, and there's some great authors too that I'll recommend. One of them is Greg Braden. I don't know if you're familiar with Greg Braden, but he wrote this book. Oh, must have been the late '90s now, or early 2000s, called The Divine Matrix, and he's a kind of an interesting guy because he's a geologist, computer scientist. He kind of studies cycles and systems, but he's got a really good way of explaining things, and I've always enjoyed his work. So let's just look at some of our comments here real quick. Yeah, Melissa writes her intentions down every day. Yeah, that's a great practice. I kind of journal on a daily basis anyways, but they talk about gratitude journals and things like that, and all those types of things. Anything that brings you closer to where you want to be, okay? And anything that helps you feel that way. And see, Kelly, yeah, a deck of intention and motivational cards on my desk. Yeah, the I am. The I am process is really cool. I read this book from Joel Osteen, and when I say I read, I do audio, but I always just say I read the book, called I Am. And although he's a minister, he's got one of the largest, I think, ministries in the country, and so everything comes from a religious perspective. But I really enjoyed the book, and he talked about God, and so depending on what your beliefs are, when I was listening to it, every time he said God, I said universe, and it's just so amazing how fluid things are and how they come together. So the I am movement and the I am thought process is very powerful. Thank you for sharing that, Kelly. And try that. That's a really good book. I Am by Joel Osteen. Catherine, yeah, talking about blocking self-negative talk. Yep, that's all true. Yeah, so really good feedback here, and good comments, and it's great to be able to share. There's 50 of us on this call this morning, so every comment that you make is positively impacting 49 other people. So think about that, right, when we're on these, and how we share with each other. So I hope this was helpful. It's a really super fun topic, and I'll come up with a couple more authors for you too. But Greg Braden, Divine Matrix, and then Joel Osteen's book, I Am. I think those give you kind of two different perspectives on them, but they kind of lead you to the same place. So have an amazing week. Talk to everybody soon.